Vampire games are one of gaming's strangest paradoxes. The fantasy is timeless. Immortality, power, moral decay, secrecy. And yet, after decades of attempts, we still don't have a universally agreed upon best vampire game. We have cult classics, we have flawed experiments, we have ambitious failures, but no single title that fully delivers on what it means to play as a vampire. And that absence became painfully obvious in 2025 with the release of Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines 2. After years of delays and reboots, Bloodlines 2 finally launched, and while it wasn't a disaster, its performance issues, uneven design, and scaled back RPG depth left many fans disappointed. Frame shutters, missing features, and a shift away from deep role playing meant the game landed with mixed reception instead of genre defining praise. And that failure matters because Bloodlines 2 was supposed to be the answer. It was supposed to modernize vampire RPGs and finally set the standard. Instead, it reminded us how hard this fantasy is to get right. Which brings us to the Blood of Dawnwalker, a new IP, a new studio, and a bold pitch. And maybe, just maybe, the game that finally understands what a vampire game should be. But the question isn't just can it be good, it's can it be the best yet? What defines a great vampire game? To judge whether the Blood of Dawnwalker could be the best vampire game yet, we first need a compass. What actually makes a vampire game succeed? Traditionally, the genre thrives on atmosphere and narrative tension. The original Bloodlines did have the perfect combat or mechanical polish, but it nailed a convincing world of darkness, deep lore, and memorable characters that made the player feel like an embedded participant in a shadowy subculture. Then there are games like Vampyr, a game ambitious in its themes of moral conflict and vampiric identity. Vampyr's strength lay in its thematic resonance. Each life you took to power yourself carried narrative weight and word consequence. But the combat loop and repetitive design held it back from being truly great. More recent attempts like Bloodlines 2 have wrestled with similar challenges. Its word and story elements show promise, but critics and players alike have pointed to lifeless maps, shallow progression, and repetitive quests as barriers to immersion. So the bar isn't just aesthetic or lore, it's word coherence, mechanical integration, and player consequence. A great vampire game makes vampirism matter on every level, emotionally, mechanically, and narratively. What the Blood of Dawnwalker actually offers. So what is the Blood of Dawnwalker bringing to the table? Let's break it down from its official positioning. Developed by Rebel Wolves, a studio co-founded by veterans from the Witcher 3 team and published by Bandai Namco, Dawnwalker is pitched as a dark fantasy action RPG with strong narrative and sandbox elements, set in an alternate 14th century Europe scarred by war and plague. The story centers on Coin, a Dawnwalker, a hybrid caught between his fading humanity and ruthless nocturnal power. This duality is seeded into the very soul of the game. By day, Coin relies on human skill, politics, and limited combat, but by night he embraces supernatural abilities, traversing environments with shadow teleportation and brutal powers that reshape gameplay. Mechanically, the game offers two divergent combat systems. Daytime swordplay and directional parrying recall thoughtful medieval dueling, while nighttime vampiric combat emphasizes mobility, teleportation, and visceral power. As you feed, bite, and regenerate, your ability unlocks along three distinct skill trees that amplify either human resilience, supernatural velocity, or hybrid synergy. Couple this with a time resource system, where 30 in-game days limit how long you have to shape outcomes, and you get a design that promises meaningful consequence. Time isn't just a backdrop here, it's a mechanic forcing players to make choices with stakes. How it compares to previous vampire games. When we stack Dawnwalker against earlier genre entries, some differences immediately emerge, and not just superficial ones. Unlike Vampyr, which primarily explored vampiric morality in isolated urban pockets, Dawnwalker sets its narrative on a sweeping open canvas where political upheaval, faction conflict, and environmental storytelling interact with vampiric identity in a far more systematic way. In comparison to Bloodlines 2, which some fans criticized for its dwindled RPG depth and technical challenges despite strong lore, Dawnwalker clearly aims for a mechanically integrated world where systems and story reinforce each other. The way Dresden thrives or collapses depending on player choices, not scripted beats. Bloodlines 2's world often felt empty or repetitive, undermining immersion. Whereas Dawnwalker's promise of a richly detailed Vale Sangora with meaningful exploration is a strong contrast. It's also worth noting that the studio's leadership openly embraces comparisons to The Witcher 3, while stressing that they want Dawnwalker to be its own kind of beast. This suggests ambition not just to match but to innovate within the dark fantasy RPG space. So the key question then isn't whether Dawnwalker can be better than what's come before. It's whether it can integrate the best elements, including narrative consequence, atmospheric world building, and distinct combat styles, into a cohesive experience that feels uniquely its own. Potential weaknesses and caveats. Of course, ambition doesn't guarantee success, and Dawnwalker has its own risks. First is the technical execution. Building a large open world game in Unreal Engine 5 is no small task, and many Unreal Engine 5 games have struggled with optimization. Given how Bloodlines 2 suffered from stuttering and lack of features like native HDR at launch, technical polish will be essential if Dawnwalker is to impress players rather than frustrate them. Second, the narrative sandbox and time resource mechanics could be a double-edged sword. While they promote meaningful choice, they also risk creating stress and confusion if not communicated clearly. Players might feel punished for exploration if they mismanage in-game time or perceive freedom as pressure rather than agency. Another concern lies in pacing. With two distinct combat systems and a dynamic world, balancing intensity and downtime is crucial. Too much complexity without meaningful purpose could overwhelm, while too much narrative without satisfying gameplay payoffs could feel shallow. Lastly, reputation and player expectation matter. With the mixed legacy of Bloodlines 2 still fresh, players may approach any new vampire RPG with skepticism, expecting flaws rather than surprises. Dawnwalker has a chance to surprise, but that means it must deliver not just ambition, but clarity, cohesion, and polish. Why this could be the definitive vampire game. Despite its risks, The Blood of Dawnwalker embodies several strategic design choices that could earn it the genre crown. First, its dual identity system, human by day, vampire by night, isn't just aesthetic. It shapes how players approach every challenge, from combat strategy to social interaction. This reflects a key aspect of vampire lore, duality and compromise. Two games have translated that into gameplay systems that make both sides of the identity truly meaningful. But Dawnwalker leans into the tension with deliberate intent. Second, the emphasis on meaningful consequence, where time, resource allocation, and narrative hooks intertwine, could set a new standard. Many RPGs promise choice, but few make players feel the weight of those choices through mechanics. The 30-day limit promises just such weight, enforcing meaningful prioritization over endless exploration. Third, the pedigree of the team, including creators with the Witcher 3 experience, means the design culture behind the game roots itself in deep RPG tradition, while striving to innovate rather than imitate. Finally, the world building, set against plague, war, and vampire uprising, gives Dawnwalker narrative layers that reach beyond personal survival to broader consequence. And this blend of personal and systematic stakes could elevate the game's storytelling behind many vampire games that focus narrowly on isolated plots. So, can The Blood of Dawnwalker be the best vampire game yet? The ingredients are certainly there: a rich narrative sandbox, distinct dual gameplay identity, meaningful choice mechanics, and a team that clearly understands the emotional and mechanical complexity of dark fantasy. But execution will be everything. Technical polish, pacing, and balancing freedom with clarity will determine whether this big idea becomes a big game. But if Don Walker delivers on his promise, a coherent world that feels alive, choices that truly matter, and a vampiric identity that feels both powerful and burdened, then it may just not fill the hole left by Bloodlines 2. It might just define the genre for years to come. But what about you? What's your opinion on all this? Can Blood of Dawnwalker actually be the best vampire game yet? Let's talk in the comments down below. And hey, if you like this video, click like, share, and subscribe to watch more videos like this one. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Until then, stay silver.